North London champagne socialist elite strike again. BBC Match of the Day star Gary Lineker and Oscar-winning actress Dame Emma Thompson and a bunch of other so-called celebrities that I've never heard of have signed an open letter calling for the immediate phasing out of fossil fuels. In an ideal world, we'd be phasing out these old showbiz fossils, whose hot air is probably the main cause of global warming. Isn't it ironic that the likes of fried potato salesman Gary Lineker and Oscar-winning whinger Emma Thompson, who are both literally worth tens of millions of pounds each, are willing to put their names to a policy which will see the rest of us made even poorer? The idea of transitioning away from fossil fuels in the short to medium term is utter insanity and economic suicide. Factories would grind to a halt, as they already have done in Germany thanks to green policies. The cost of fuel for cars, homes and businesses would skyrocket. Most goods would become infinitely more expensive. Inflation would return with a vengeance, and we'd likely be reliant on the likes of Russia and Saudi Arabia just to keep the lights on. But Dame Emma, for example, won't have to worry about the cost of her eco-ideology. She can just make another instalment of Nanny McPhee. And Gary Lineker can just do some more TV adverts for unhealthy junk food snacks, further worsening the obesity crisis, particularly among children. But these are the good people, folks. Do keep up. The eye-watering double standards of these stars knows no limit. Don't forget, it was just a few months ago when private jet-dwelling racing car driver Lewis Hamilton backed the militant eco-group Just Stop Oil. You couldn't make it up. Meanwhile, Gary Lineker, who dismissively called October the 7th the Hamas thing, preaches the eco-message whilst broadcasting from the World Cup in the Middle East, in vast air-conditioned stadia in the desert. Now, Gary says, we're all hypocrites. No, Gary, you're a hypocrite. And Dame Emma's hypocrisy is uglier than the aforementioned alter ego Nanny McPhee. She said on a recent climate change march, we cannot take out any more oil from the ground. Except this is a woman who cavorted on a vast gas-guzzling 350-foot mega yacht owned by billionaire media tycoon Barry Diller, co-founder of the US conservative news channel Fox News, whose right-wing output I've got no doubt Dame Emma detests. But what she didn't detest is the chilled champagne and caviar served up on this opulent vessel, one which carries two enormous diesel engines plus fossil fuel-powered generators, presumably to put bubbles in the jacuzzi. Dame Emma first reportedly flew first class back in the day from the US to support a Just Stop Oil campaign, even though the first-class BA flight from New York to London costs £18,000 and generates nearly 2 tons of carbon dioxide for each passenger in the elite cabin. According to the paper, onlookers claimed that Dame Emma drank Laurent Perrier champagne and dined on beef carpaccio, even though she has also previously called on us to eat less meat in order to save the planet. I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. You can't sit on board a £200 million super yacht and jet around the world whilst telling us, the great unwashed, that we've got to take fewer flights, eat less meat and spend 20 grand on a new boiler. Now, I'm all for cleaning up the planet and reducing our emissions. Britain is a world leader in green tech and there are jobs in it. Transitioning to green future will reduce pollution and offers many opportunities alongside a smart mix of nuclear and, yes, fossil fuels. But this transition has to be conducted with 3 things in mind: the health and viability of the economy, policies must be rooted in evidence-based science, and these changes cannot happen without the will and support of the people. And that's not what we've got now, with the insanity of Ed Miliband banning perfectly viable oil and gas exploration in the North Sea, bankrolling green projects because the private sector have run a mile, and betting the house on flaky renewables. Emma Thompson and Gary Lineker can afford that, but you and I can't. It's funny because Emma Thompson's films, from which she has accrued millions, are very popular in China. So as a big celebrity in China, why doesn't Dame Emma hop on a first-class BA flight to Beijing and convey her concerns to President Xi? She could march on Tiananmen Square. Dame Emma loves a march. She can ask him whether China, by far the world's biggest polluter, are doing net zero themselves. The answer may surprise her. She'll be quite uncharacteristically lost for words. This eco letter, signed by a bunch of rich, woke celebrities, is dangerous, it's insane, it's unhinged, and it's a joke. Let's hope it gets lost in the post. Your reaction, gbnews.com/your say. But first, tonight's top pundits, writer and broadcaster Nina Mishkov, former EastEnders star John Altman, and ex-newspaper editor and media consultant Neil Wallace. Great to see all three of you. There you go. Well, listen, I've got to start with the most famous actor in the room tonight. It's John Altman. Your reaction to the comments of Dame Emma and Net Zero?
Well, they both admitted to hypocrisy, haven't they?
But does that get them off the hook?
Well, perhaps their hearts are in the right place, but they're not actually doing as they say, are they? They're not.
I mean, do you think... What's your view about actors and celebrities pronouncing on political issues of the day?
Well, you're sitting here doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, would you have done that when you were starring in EastEnders? Would you have been on Twitter commenting on this, that and the other?
Probably. Sometimes, yeah. I feel quite strongly about a lot of things, actually. And, yeah...
Because you've got strong views on what's happening in the Middle East at the moment, haven't you?
Yeah, very, yeah. I mean, that's what I was thinking, why Starmer, for example, should stop sending arms out there, because, I mean, the figures are horrific. I mean, over 41,000.
It's carnage what's happening out there.
Yeah.
With regard...
So, I do speak out on that.
Yeah.
Because I've actually followed it for many, many years, and I knew that there would have been troubles over the last 50 years, and the British were responsible for it in the first place.
Well, sure, and I've got no doubt we'll turn to the Middle East when the papers come in at 10:30, and as you say, it's a big subject. But my issue with Net Zero is I think we need to clean up the planet, but rich celebrities telling us to get a new boiler and stop eating meat is a bit rich.
Yeah, I think so, because they're not carrying out they're not practicing what they preach, are they, really? So,
yeah, it's not the problem,
I think you're being very unkind to Emma, and you always are unkind to Emma. She's a woman who can be annoying at times because she is so talented.
Well, she's probably your neighbour in Hampstead, isn't she?
No, she's not my neighbour in Hampstead. She's not my neighbour in Hampstead. But the thing is, Emma has her heart in the right place. And the letter that they've signed is not saying everybody's got to have a new boiler at 20 grand. It's not saying this. It's just saying it's asking the United Nations Summit to have an agreement to start transitioning towards...
Which means transitioning towards poverty, doesn't it, for any nation that adopts it?
It doesn't say at what speed. It doesn't say by 2030 and bankrupt us.
So what's the point of it, then?
It is just making their feelings felt to make sure the United Nations has this in the agreement that or the statement they make at the end of this particular summit, which takes place on September 22nd, 23rd. So it's actually it's a bunch of parents who are talking about this on behalf of their children.
Wow.
Mo Farah's another one who signed it, so he's not a no-hoper rich celebrity.
I heard he'd done a runner, but Neil, what's your view on this? Because I just think that rich celebrities lecturing us on net zero is too much.
Yeah. So, who appointed this group who decided to go looking for publicity-hungry celebrities to actually put their names to something? Frankly, they won't make the slightest bit of difference to... pardon me, to a group of politicians at the UN. You know, who are these people? Who asked them? Early this year, I think I've told you this before, I went on a train trip across China. Yes. If you go on a train trip across China, every half hour, 40 minutes or so, you will see a power station pumping out gases into the air. What I would be much, much more impressed by would be if those people, they're all rich enough, who have signed this petition, all these celebrities, got together, and as you mentioned, suggested in your Take at 10, maybe they should go to Beijing, maybe they should go to Tiananmen Square, maybe they should stage a demonstration there, calling on the Chinese to stop the amount of pollution they do, the world's biggest polluter. You know what? They would last 2 minutes. They'll never think about doing it. But what they will do is support action here when, in fact, the real truth is that Britain has been a world leader in reducing the amount of
and should
carbon
remain
emissions
that way, and should
in this
remain that
country.
way.
OK, briefly, Nina, last word.
Well, I think it's terribly unfair to pick them out in this way. They are doing this out of the goodness of the goodness of the. No,
they're signalling their virtue, aren't they?
No, it's not.
They
genuinely are concerned that otherwise they wouldn't do it.
But they're economically insulated from the consequences of their words.
They are economically.
They can afford net zero, and my view as listeners
do you
can't.
take flights?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you take flights? Do you take flights? You said you went on a train, Jay, but did you?
Yes, but I do
flights?
because I love me a fossil fuel.
Well, fine, but that's...
Do I take first class £18,000 flights across the Atlantic
probably paid for by the thing. Look, these are people who genuinely care, and if their names can make a slightest bit of difference to help the planet,
Russia,
then good on them.
Russia and America belching fossil fuels like China, doing the same thing. Nobody seems to stop them. Huge businesses. That multi-billion.
Is it a mockery that we're going to bankrupt ourselves for net zero here whilst this goes on elsewhere?
Absolutely.
We're not
Does it make sense to you?
We're not going to bankrupt ourselves. We are not going to bankrupt ourselves.
We will.
If China aren't doing net zero,
must be an alternative, surely. Yeah?
Pardon?
An alternative?
Yeah, I'm going for smart net
nuclear
zero.
power?
And a bit of nuclear would be very nice. So listen, folks, that's what I think is an energy mix. But look, we'll return to this with the papers at 10:30. I think you'll agree that feelings are running high on this one. But next up, Princess Kate goes back to work.